Does traditional education deliver or fall short in educating and nurturing children? Introducing Aligned Learning Revolution, the show that confronts conventional norms and presents dynamic alternatives to transform education. Host Kahila Sivas tackles the foundational issues within classroom walls and advocates for holistic learning opportunities. It's time to reveal the strength of the innovative, holistic neurogrowth learning approach that goes beyond conventional teaching or tutoring methods, assuring every learner of a stress-free learning journey to unlock their fullest potential. Now, join Kahila Sivas.
Molly, welcome to my show. How are you today?
I am well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me on. This is such a pleasure and an
Yeah,
honor. So
yeah.
thank you.
I was looking forward to speaking with you today. So, Molly, you've been an educator for 30 years, and during
Mhm.
that time, you have been in the public school, but you transitioned into homeschool co-ops. Well, why did you make that transition?
For several reasons. One is even back, goodness, I quit public school in 1998. So that was several years ago now. And even then, I saw what I call the handwriting on the wall. I saw what was coming down the pike. I saw mandated curriculum coming. I saw testing coming. I saw already how parents were basically ruling what was happening. And to give an example of that, I had a student that needed my class to graduate. And it was a first hour class, and he seldom was there. He just didn't get out of bed. So he failed my class. And the mom was angry with me that I didn't call and get his son up out of bed in the morning. And I'm like, what the heck? And then they magically found a science credit for him so he could graduate. And he came back and he laughed at me. And I was like, you know what? This
Because
was in 1997, 98. And I went, this is not what I want to do.
yeah, it's really not setting your child up for success in the real world. Who's going to do that for him, right?
Right. And it was some experiences like that that I went, there's got to be alternatives here. There's got to be other ways where I can share my passions and share my gifts
Yes.
other than public school.
Yeah, and you're
And
very passionate about science. That's
I
your
am.
that's your
I
love.
am.
Just
So I actually this apple, as my siblings say, didn't fall far from the tree. So my dad owned and operated a marine science camp growing up. So I just had this natural inclination to being outside and just being very passionate about, science and critters as I call them, because it's like, oh my gosh, it's just amazing, and sharing that. So that's really kind of just that little nugget of why and how I got into teaching.
yeah, absolutely. And then when you left the school system, as you say, there was so many things that was happening to you, pointing to the direction that you should do something different, especially when a child gets a mark that wasn't earned and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have any control over. And more importantly, it's not even the mark, it's the principal. I'm sure that's what
Yes.
you, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it was just earth-shattering to me that we can promote this, that you would go above, that you would basically lie, that you would teach your child that it was okay to lie.
Yes.
And that's how I felt. It
Mhm.
was,
Mhm. Mhm. And we're really not doing anything for that child anyway. In the long term,
no,
you're
no,
actually hurting him. Yeah.
not at all.
Yeah.
And, in some ways I'd like to know, what happened with
Yeah.
that. But I'm like, it's okay, whatever happened. And really, I hope that person is successful, right? Because you want the
Yeah.
best. But that was not the way,
Mm,
to go about that.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And then you created your own wave into homeschooling co-ops,
Hmm.
and then you started teaching there. And then not only that, because of your love for science, you have summer camps.
I do.
Tell us about a little bit about that. How long have you been doing that?
Almost 15 years.
Wow.
And it was crazy because we had just moved to where we are now, and it's a yard with a couple acres. And
Mm.
I was literally sitting in church one day, and this idea popped like into my, you can do your own summer camps. And I told my husband, and he was like,
Mm.
uh, but I had such a passion. It was like, I can do this. And honestly, here my kids, my two kids were growing up, and I struggled with the cost of the camps. And not only the cost of the camps, but I just felt like there just wasn't a lot of value.
Oh,
And that really bothered me. And I
mhm.
just went, honestly, not to sound in whatever, but it was like, I can do better.
Mhm.
I can do better. I can create something of incredible value that isn't going to cost an arm and a leg.
Mm.
And so I did. And I started out with one camp, and then I decided, oh, I started out with what I called a backyard science camp. And then I created a geology camp. And then I created a marine biology camp. And then I created outdoor adventure camp. And those have been my mainstays. And so I just rotate through different camps in the summer, and they're all held on my property.
Nice.
And I've got all the resources here, which is just fantastic. And I have kids that come back year after year after year, and now they've grown up and they can't wait to be my counselors. So I've
Nice.
actually started working with the teens that come help, and I give them leadership skills and training. So I call it like a camp within a camp.
Nice.
It's amazing.
So
Um,
when does it start? Like how long are these camps? Like a
These
week long?
camps are a
Okay.
week long. So this summer, I'm offering for the first time a little tyke outdoor adventure camp, because I would have all these little siblings come along and they'd be so disappointed they couldn't stay. So I decided to offer one this summer for like 4 to 6 year olds for a half a day. And then I'm doing 2 sessions of my outdoor adventure camp and 1 session of marine biology camp. And the outdoor adventure camp, Coahuila, I started because I see some of these camps are so big and kids would be waiting in line forever. Like, for example, to do archery. And
Yes.
I went, what if I could offer a camp that was smaller? I take
Mhm.
a max of 30 to 34 students, and I could offer stations to where the students rotate around different stations, and they get to try things in a really safe environment without this feeling of being overwhelmed, and without having to stand in line for an hour and hopefully to shoot the target once.
Once.
What if they could experience all these different things in a safe environment?
Yeah, you did it. You created it.
And I did. Yeah.
Yes, beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful. I want to talk a little bit more about that. Before we go, I want to ask about we both got connected because we alignment and universe and God brings us together in
Mm.
alignment. Now, you were attracted to the holistic neurogrowth learning success coaching program. Why? What was the reason? The
Oh my
attraction.
goodness. To me, this was the next step in my evolution of teaching. It was like I knew there was more. There was more that I wanted to do. And because I see students struggling so much, and even in the homeschool co-ops where I have smaller class sizes and I design my own curriculum, I see so many of them, they're just struggling, like, and I know I deliver content, but I wanted more than just content.
Mm,
And that's when I found your program. And it was like, honestly, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do.
mm,
This is the next step. This is what I've been looking for, that I didn't honestly even realize I was looking for.
yeah.
But it combines all my passions of wellness, of science, of the learning styles. It combines all of those into one cohesive package that I can work one-on-one with students.
Yeah, and you love finding the superpowers of
Yes.
your students.
Yes.
and help them learn and grow. And then you also have BS in biology and master's in education from Seattle. So it's awesome. I want to know about your fascination with some learning style assessments. And, there's a learning style that you're very passionate about using with your students, right? Tell us a little
I
bit about
am.
that. And why is this important?
So I'm going to give a backstory. So when I was well, all through school and junior high and high school, I just honestly felt a little lost. Like I would just almost felt like I was missing something. This little inkling of why can't I seem to learn as fast as others? And, back in the 80s, it's not like we had tools. We didn't have these tools. And I got A's and B's. It's not like I was failing, but inside I just felt like there was something kind of just missing, like dots weren't connecting. And I took the SATs and I got an average score. Okay, average to actually slightly below average. And my high school counselor looked at my scores, and Kohila, I will never forget, she goes, "You're not going to be accepted to college, much less make it through college."
I've heard worse things said to kids.
Right. And I was just like, well, okay.
I believe it.
And so, anyways, I was accepted to college. And it was in college that all of a sudden I started to figure out how I learned and what I needed to do to learn. And my grades and my confidence just shot up. And again, it's not that I had failing grades by any means, but instead of having B's, I got A's and I graduated, cum laude. And I was like, okay, I think I made it through college.
Yes, made it through.
I made it through college, right? And during the course of my education classes, I actually had a learning style class. And that's where it was like, oh, just all these light bulbs went off. And I went, I got it. I am not stupid. I am not slow. I am not delayed. I am not all these things. And it was immensely powerful. So when I started teaching public school, I started the first week of my classes. I gave all my high school students learning style inventories. And I would write them down on 3x5 cards. So I had a 3x5 card for every student as to what their learning style was. And I would arrange them into groups accordingly. And would you know, Kohila, I had very little discipline problems, very little.
So did you get them to understand their learning style?
I worked on that throughout the course because in my teaching, because I'm aware of learning styles, so I incorporate all those learning styles into my teaching. So I am a highly visual, auditory, tactile teacher. I teach things in ways in different modalities so that even my my beavers, my lions, my golden retrievers, my otters, providing things to where they can all participate and feel like they can achieve in my class.
Yes.
That's what I wanted. But it's hard when you're teaching so much subject to incorporate all of that. But I sure made a stab at it. And I'll never forget one time I gave these learning styles inventories to all my students, and it wasn't long after I had a parent conference with a set of parents, and they came in and their question was, "What's wrong with our child?" And I go, "Oh my gosh, there is nothing wrong. Let me show you where he is." And Kohila, he was so right-brained. He was like almost off the chart. And his parents were very left-brained. And when I showed them this, it was like,
eye-opening. Yeah.
We had no idea.
Yes.
And
So it helps everyone understand
important.
each other, right? Everybody gets to understand each other instead of, as you said, all the words you just used were pretty powerful. Delayed. What was the other one? Delayed. I'm not delayed. I'm not
Slow.
slow. What was the
Yeah.
other one? Last one you said something. Yeah, just those words are so powerful for a child to hear, but they could just understand. So you help them understand their learning style, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How does your learning style of teaching reflect? How do you reflect this in the classroom? So you just told us that through different modalities, right?
Hmm.
Yep. And then you can get the parents to understand them.
Yes. And that is the beauty of coaching, because then I can also work with the parents. And so I just finished alignment days with a student, and the mom all of a sudden, and the student, had just these huge aha moments of, oh my gosh, the miscommunication and misunderstanding we've been having. And the email that I got this morning was just absolutely heartwarming, of just that appreciation for opening that door. And what a treasure. I mean, what a
Gift.
gift.
Yeah. Yep.
Because Kohila, and you're such an advocate for this. If we don't help the families communicate and connect, then we've lost.
No, yeah. That's number one. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's what I was talking to someone yesterday, and it came up as well, is we're so connected. At the same time, we're all also disconnected
so
more than
disconnected.
ever, more than
Yes.
ever, more than ever.
Yes.
Because within the family structure, we do not have quality conversations. We're not present, right? You and I could also fall into that sometimes, right? If we're not mindful about it, I could also fall
Correct.
into that because I'm so busy, I'm so this, I'm so that. And then we have these devices. And then if we don't unplug, we lose the conversation. As you said, conversation's everything, foundation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So honestly, one of the reasons why I started homeschooling was I recognized my son and his learning style need, and I knew a typical classroom would not be a good fit for him.
Is he a
And it's
scientist
not
like you?
like
Is he a
he
scientist
is.
like you?
No, actually, he is, although he loves science, it's just different. He went into welding and mechanic, and he's
Mm,
very kinesthetic, and his learning style, and he's very much a perfectionist. And I realized this early on watching him, and it was like, oh yeah, typical regular classroom is not going to be a good fit for him. And we ended up homeschooling, and he thrived.
mm,
And later on, when he was ready, he goes, I'm ready for public school. It's like, okay. And he was very successful,
mm.
but he realized too that it's like, yeah, this regular traditional classroom learning is not my cup of tea. And I go, I know. And he recognizes why, and it's okay, which
Yep.
is such a gift.
Yes. And I was going to also add is if parents are listening to us, you were a teacher, you knew that. But a lot of parents don't know that. And then when a child who's like your son can't sit and moves around, then they get a label such as ADHD or something, some sort.
Yes. Yes.
But your
Gotta
son didn't have that. Your son didn't have
No,
that. But he would have been
no.
easily diagnosed with that
He
if
could
he
have
had stayed.
very easily been diagnosed with that. or whatever. And it's like, no, this is his learning style. This is the way he needs to learn. And I remember, have him finally, learning to read, and his favorite thing to do was be in a chair upside down. Like he would be on our couch and his legs would be up over, the back, and he would be with it, and he could do that for like a half hour just reading away.
Upset.
And I'm like, how cool is that?
Yeah. But if he was in this classroom, he,
Oh,
he would be in a special room.
yes, that would not have been able to go. But that's just, and it's like, what a privilege to give these kids the opportunity to learn and grow like they need to, because
Yeah.
that's their personalities.
And some other countries like Finland and Switzerland and all the other countries that are higher, their education system is way better. We always look up to those systems, right? They have it that kids can be anywhere, like they don't have to sit and learn at the desk. They can stand and learn, they can bounce and learn, they can play and learn. Like it doesn't matter. What does it suit you, right? Find that space for you, because not everybody learns the same way. So it's tragic though, because if you think about it now, I'm just keep hearing from so many other teachers I meet with that they are even taking from kindergarten, the toys and everything, there's no longer there to play. It's actually a sitting down desk opportunity for the child to learn, apparently, at the 6 hours. So here you are, you're a science teacher, all hands on, kinesthetic, move around, touch and feel, and they're taking away from kindergarten. What do you think of that? I just heard a couple of people tell me in the last few days, so it's just in my mind, so I thought I'd ask you.
I think that's honestly, I think that's nuts.
Yes.
Especially, and it just absolutely brings tears to my eyes because kids at that age learn by being tactile. They need to touch and feel and explore. So I created, of all things, a grade 1-2 physics class. It's called
Nice.
Physics Zip Zap Zoom. And I bring in all these things for the kids to play with. So as they arrive, they know for the first 20 minutes, they just get to explore all these different things. So recently we're doing a unit on light and color. So I have periscopes, I have kaleidoscopes, I have mirrors, I have a big mirror that I tack to the wall that is sort of a paper one, and they can just, it's hilarious the things that they get to do. I have color things that spin and all these different things they just get to explore and play with. Then we do a lesson. And
Yep.
then they get to make something and then they explore some more. And I always give them something to take home, because then I email the parents and say, this is what they got today. This is what we learned about. So this is really your opportunity to ask questions. What did you learn about today? What is this? Explain this to me. Why did you, why did you bring this home? What was and it's like to promote that
Conversation.
communication and
Yeah.
promote conversation.
Yeah, the beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, so that's what's happening in our classroom. It's coming to sit down and do your work and get on the computer and answer questions, and let's get the markings done, right? So what you're doing is amazing, because without this type of learning, children can't learn. We know this. And
Cannot.
how much is science being pushed? Like people say kids don't like science anymore. I've heard that a lot too. They don't
Ah,
want to learn it, but science is like, our world is science, like we live in it, we live inside science.
we
What do
do. I mean, our bodies
Yes.
alone, I'm like, oh my gosh, I mean, you and I can see each other because of our eyes.
Yes, yeah.
And I mean, just it's incredible. And it saddens me because, for one, in elementary school, so many teachers are given these kits. And you go, okay, that's great, but they just don't have the time. And so many of them just don't have the background. It's actually I think a rarer elementary teacher that has a background in science. And so many of them just don't know what to do. And then as kids move into middle school, again, they just don't have the background of being able to explore. Sciences come out of books and these kits. I'm working with a student right now. She goes, science makes me cry. And we've gone back and I go, I can see why science makes you cry. Because she's had these teachers even in middle school that just basically, here's the textbook, read this, do this worksheet. And I'm like, that's not science.
Yep, yep, that's worksheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just doing worksheet for time, keeping
Busy,
busy work, right? It's basically
right?
busy
And
work.
I had science teachers like that, and I would cry in a sense inside because I go, this could be so much more fun and enjoyable. Yeah.
So now, besides having these camps for students and working at the homeschool co-ops, as a holistic neurogrowth learning success coach, you offer very important coachings to students. And how do you offer that with science, or are you teaching them just learning to learn? How do you bring them both together?
So as I go through my pillars, I offer science coaching,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they need with that. And I offer a learning styles, and I go through and in my alignment sessions, give them the inventories. And then I know then how they learn and can teach them skills accordingly with all the tools that we have. And then I also have a wellness component as well. If they need help with their nutrition, if they need help with exercise, because you know how important it is, nutrition is for our brain. So, I mean, how much sugar is in our food impacts our brain. And it just kills me when these kids show up to class with a, you know, fuzzy pink drink from the local coffee shop. It's like, ah, because all that
You just
sugar,
see sugar. You just see sugar, not the drink. You just
yes,
see
because
sugar.
that impacts their brain and their learning.
Isn't
And
it, isn't it funny, even in the ones that, not funny, serious, isn't it very serious that even in the, we think they're healthy, like yogurt,
oh,
it's full of sugar, like half of it is sugar. So, and then who knows what other the good bacterias are there in the yogurt. I'm just
yeah,
saying,
so
if I
there's a
buy it,
yogurt brand that I like, but it's because it is low sugar, high protein, and I know how it's made, and it does, it's again, I can help with the ingredients. Do you know what to look for? Do you know what
yeah.
are you consuming?
And you
Um,
you coach this in
I
your
do.
nutrition. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so important.
Hmm.
And going to shopping into the grocery store, you must read the labels now. Like otherwise, you're just eating not even real food anymore. It's like I don't even know what some of the words. They're not food items. I mean,
Oh
it's
no,
something
they're not.
different.
And it's a little scary, let me tell you, because having that science background is comes in handy, because I can go, what is this? And then you start doing a little research and you're like, what is this doing in here? And I just posted on my Facebook, for example, that cleaning products, all these things that are in
Yeah.
cleaning products are triggering learning disabilities. And
Yep.
it's like, well, yes, because
Mm-hmm.
there's all these different chemicals in there that have been linked to different cancers and neurological, issues. And
Yeah, we're just putting anything and everything. That's why this sense, science sense, I can say it as it's like you have to have a math sense or some sense, but this is like a science sense. You gotta really investigate what you're eating, what you're smelling, even
Mhm.
smell, right? Even these candles we buy, right? Full of toxic. You burn one of those and you're sitting in toxic air.
It's
You don't know what's in it.
crazy.
You don't know what is
And
in it.
sometimes even my husband, sometimes he's like, really? And I go, just trust me, honey. Trust me. You
Mm,
know, I'm not trying to be make us live out in the middle of nowhere, but it's like, yes, there are things that we can choose to not bring into our homes, or
mm,
we can find alternative things that are so much better, that don't have all this stuff in them. And it's been a few years now, but I had a severe concussion,
mm,
and I was in the middle of Kenya. And this concussion was actually life-changing, because when I came home, all these smells from chemicals, all of a sudden I couldn't even be in the room. It would give me instant headaches and migraines. And I was like, what's going on? And that's when I started doing research, and I went,
mm.
oh my gosh.
Yep.
And yes, I emptied lots of things out, and um, just
So, so what tips can you give parents if they have kids and they have a family to look after? Like, what should we avoid? Like, give us a list of few things, like two things in terms of
okay,
these.
so a lot of shampoos, in
Mm,
fact, most shampoos, soaps, conditioners, things like that, have parabens and phthalates, which are endocrine disruptors. And so get rid of that stuff, because why would you want your daughter, for example, using something that has known endocrine disruptors in it?
so what is endocrine?
That means that
disruptors too.
you are changing your whole endocrinology system. That means you are creating the possibility of having cancer in the uterus, cancer in the ovaries. You can change, they're actually studying now how some of these things are actually disrupting our DNA.
Mm.
So we are actually changing our DNA to where we are not as, our DNA is not as healthy as it used to be.
It's not pure, like it's contaminated.
It's weakened.
We
It's
can, yeah.
weakened. And
So
so
are these companies doing purposefully, or is it just that they think it's great to put it?
both, because for one, for a long time we didn't know. Think back to
Yeah.
Agent Orange and these things where, the book was published, Silent Spring, and you go, oh yeah, this stuff is really nasty. But companies have been getting away with putting this stuff in for so long that, and I hate to get into the politics of this, but it's really true, is so they fund so many things in the
Yeah.
government,
Yep.
donating to politicians and things, and they go, well, it's just such a minute amount, it's such a minute amount, it's such a minute amount. But the thing is, this builds up over time. If you use shampoo every day and
Yeah.
you're using that minute amount, it's almost like the same as microplastics. They are finding microplastics now in our bloodstreams.
Yep.
It doesn't go away. It just
Yes.
continues to build. They don't want to change because that means they would have to change their formula. They would have to use more expensive products. They would have to, they'd
No
actually have to
wonder
make a better product.
product. No wonder kids are being born more and more with like autism or other kind of the learning disabilities too, right? Because
Correct.
we got so much chemicals in our food. Even like if you buy orange or apple, it's all sprayed with
It
so many
is.
things, like, and it covered with this glossy thing that, I
Mhm.
mean, it's apparently it's not even good for you to.
So I do buy organic whenever I can. For example, I get organic beef, I get, organic milk. There's a lot of very simple things that you can do if you just become aware and are mindful about that. Because the article, in fact, and as I say, I posted on my Facebook today, they've actually linked these chemicals to autism.
Yeah, that's what I was going. That's what I was saying. Yeah, lots of autistic children are more and more coming up and being labeled.
Correct.
One thing is that we don't have learning styles or connection before correction methods implemented in the school system. So we directly go to, if you're not learning the way you're supposed to, then you have something wrong with you. What is that something wrong, right? Let's find out the wrong part first and then label you. Only other than the reason I always say, only reason that I kind of was ever okay with this testing and all that is because that's the way the child is going to get any help, right? Otherwise, they'll just pass through classroom after classroom just unnoticed. So that's the only
But
reason
it's hard
label.
because we're labeling these kids. And I was talking to my sister, and she's in education now, which is fantastic. And she has a student that has a label, and therefore the parent and the student is like, oh, I don't have to do that because I'm this. Nah, I don't have to do that. I have ADHD. I don't have to do that. And then it's like we've given them an excuse to go,
Mhm.
no, I don't have to try.
Mhm. Mhm. Instead, actually giving them the tools. Okay, you may have this, whatever you have is okay, but how are you going to work at it now? Okay, I mean, that's the whole part, right? How are you gonna learn? How do
Right.
you learn? I think label, minus the label, and just ask each child, how do you learn, right? That's what we do as a holistic
Yes.
neurogrowth learning success. How do you learn?
How
And
do you learn?
yeah, it's
Yes.
fascinating. I want to know because I mean, you're a fascinating person right here, right? Uh,
Yes. And those become what I call their superpowers.
yes, yes.
And that's, when you work with a student and show them what their superpowers are, their eyes just light up.
Yeah. Like my husband have ADHD. He's been diagnosed later in his life.
Mhm.
He never knew he had it. Therefore, he was always in trouble, right? Because people were, that's what he thought, right? But if he had known what he needed, like you figured out for your, son, he needed that. His mom never did that. I mean, she put him in a private school where they can hit him at that time. It was in the 70s.
Right.
You can sign your kid up to get.
Yes.
It was a different era, what he did is he learned how to maneuver through that cycle of, I don't want to sit, I don't want to work. He would escape from the classroom and all this stuff because he wasn't there to learn. But then later on, when he found out, he always said that, I wish I wish I knew that, because then I could have used it as my superpower. That's exactly what he said.
Yes.
Like now,
Yes.
and he went into an industry, filming industry, his attention to detail. I mean, even though he's ADHD, I don't even have the patience to look. Like if you give him something, he'll find everything and anything in it.
Wow.
Although he's ADHD and he can't stay with something, he's got a superpower that I can't even. Like I give him a piece of like a writing, I write something, and he'll pick on every single word and make sure everything goes proper and give me back a beautifully written thing. And I don't have patience for that, and I don't have any of that. But here's the person who can't sit, right?
And my husband is like your husband that can do that. I do not have that gift, and it's great because he does. And so that's
It's a
what makes us stronger, right? When you
yeah,
can
great
have,
match.
yes.
Good match, because you can do
Yes.
all the nitpicking and I'll just do the overall stuff.
Yep. Absolutely. Yes.
So kids has to be told, even if they are diagnosed at the school level, as you and I know, they won't get any support if they don't, right? They'll just be
Correct.
left alone, right? Basically, nothing's going to happen to them, and they'll pass through the school system day after day. So even if they get it, you have to turn it into a superpower. That diagnosis has
Yes.
to be turned into a superpower.
And that child needs to be held accountable
Yeah, that
for
doesn't
their
change.
learning. This is not an excuse. I heard another story where a kid was just, given his cars to go play with in the back of the room so he wouldn't be a bother. And it's like, what a disservice
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
to this child. He thinks right now this is fun and I don't have to do anything.
And that's the thing with also going back to what you started with about communication and conversation. I always tell parents that if you start giving the device too early, these phones are too early in the hands of a child, up to 6, even I'm getting older and older now, up to 6, they should not be touching this without parental supervision. Like they got to do
No.
it with you. If you're going to do something, show them something, you do it together and you take it away. Because if you
Yes.
just replace it, they're going to think that I don't need them, I just need this. Right?
Right.
It's not a replacement for mom and dad to spend time. This is what's happening now with this device, right? A lot
Yes.
of parents are replacing it as here's me. Here's me. This is me. Now you spend time with me over here as a babysitting. So what that teaches this kid over time is I'm not that important, right? If you keep giving them that, I don't have time for me. By 4 or 5 years old, they're already decided that mom and dad don't have time for me. They're just gonna, I just need to make sure I understand how to use the cell phone or the iPad.
It's like a pacifier where
Yeah,
you just go, and there's good things. You and I both know there are really good things with technology,
yeah,
but when we just constantly hand it to them
yeah,
and go here,
yeah,
that's a disservice.
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
disservice. And again, the studies of what we're doing to our brains on that technology is is crazy. And so
Tell us a little
studies
bit
are
about it.
coming out with that we're just kind of losing our abilities to focus
Yeah,
and concentrate because our brains are literally kind of turning to mush to where we're just losing that ability to connect. And it's almost like we're becoming zombies And again, articles are pointing this out of just going around in a zombie because we've become addicted to our phones, a literal addiction
Oh, yeah.
with all the symptoms that go with addiction. So
Yeah.
I've seen many times already where a parent will take away the phone or take away the tablet, and the kid just breaks down to a full-on tantrum.
Yes.
And it's more than just that it was taking away something. There is an addiction,
Chemical
a chemical
reaction happening.
addiction
Yes.
that's going on. And there are studies now to prove that.
Yes, absolutely. It's almost very close to drug addiction.
Absolutely.
It's like having drug.
It
It's
is.
a
And
hit.
that's what these studies are coming out with, that it is a literal drug addiction that we're
So,
doing. And it's crazy because how do we as parents navigate that with our kids? And it needs to be done very thoughtfully and carefully. And you need to have family communication
yeah,
and strong boundaries.
yeah, goes back to that communication. That's why people will ask me, what's your best advice for parents? Or anytime I speak, or anytime you speak, if anybody asks, we always got to go back to that fundamental thing of have communication, talk to each other, right? Like if you don't communicate, you don't know what your child's feeling. And look at yesterday, I had another person come on the podcast. They were saying about the suicide rate, right? Of kids killing themselves. It's like 4 seconds somebody is trying to kill themselves. That's where it's at, every 4 seconds. So why? Because when you get addicted, now you have, if you it's just like regular drug. I mean, any other drug that people get addicted, they can't get off of it. You can't get off of it, you don't know what to do, and then the world demands of you of to do something, then you don't know, your brain's mush, like you said, we're zombies, so how can I do anything? I don't have energy for it. I don't have any motivation to do anything.
It's hard, and it breaks my heart too when, I'm a runner and I go out in the morning and I go by bus stops, and all these middle school and high school kids, they're all like this on their phones.
Yeah.
There's no communication with each other. There's no laughing or
Socialization.
talking, socialization. It's like they're within 5 feet of each other, 4 feet of each other, 3 feet, and they're all.
And when my son was little younger, he's 17 now, but when he was younger, he would say, can I bring my friends over, mom? We're gonna have some sleepover. They all come, and there's like 6 7 of them. And then they all came in, and I was like, I'm not hearing any noise. 6 7 boys, you should be hearing like some show going on, right? Like a little party or
Something.
something.
Yes.
And then I'm like, this is awfully quiet. I have to go check it out. Are they all okay? Did they leave the house? Did they escape? And I go, and they're all sitting in each of the corners on their own devices. And I call my son outside. I didn't say in front of those kids. I called him and I said, I thought you said they're coming over to spend time together. Yes, mom, we are spending time, but online we're spending time. They're playing apparently an online game. They're all together. Then I said, why didn't they do that from their home then? I mean, what's the difference? The physical body's there, but no, physically you guys are not connecting.
It's crazy. It really is crazy. So and I think, Kohila, I think so many parents, we just don't know how to communicate. We weren't taught to communicate.
We
We've
lost it too.
lost it.
Yeah,
And many of us, didn't grow up with, I mean, I know you and I didn't grow up in sort of functional households.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to undo that and go, how can I make it better? How can I undo and relearn what I need to relearn? And I think most parents, I don't want to say most, but I think a lot of parents just don't even know what's going on because they're just lost. They don't know how to ask questions. I think that's one reason why our divorce rate is so high. You know, that lost communication. They never learned how to ask questions and communicate and resolve issues. And so our kids grow
We're
up
not,
in the same patterns.
and we're not modeling it either, right? We're not modeling it. If we don't know how to do it with our husband or wife, then we can't model it to them either. So
You
it's
know,
a
you
huge,
go into a restaurant and you see a family, and more often than not, they're all on their phones at the restaurant.
so that going back to that story with my son, I said, if you guys are gonna do this, I think they should all go home and do this from their home, because there's no point in physically sitting here and you're all in your own corners. And then I said, maybe you all should put those phones down and figure out something you can all do together over here. And then after a bit, I heard some noises walking around, moving around. Like, you got to split these guys up, because they think coming together means going on the phone, and apparently they can
Right,
all meet online. So that's the game they play, online game.
right.
So that's where they're at. So that's he was like 13 or 14 at that time. So this is kind of the sleepover that we're having, and girls are similarly too, right?
Oh,
And
very much.
yeah, girls
Very
similar
much.
too. So
Yes.
we've changed. Lots are changing. So what advice do you have for parents about in this generation, growing up kids, like in this 21st century, being a parent?
Ask questions.
Nice.
Ask questions. You know, I remember when I was teaching public school and we'd have open houses, you know, the open house curriculum night, whatever they call it now. And I would tell the parents, I said, please ask your kids what you did in my class today. And remember that I don't get paid to teach nothing,
Hmm.
because the they're gonna go, you know, what'd you do today? Nothing.
Nothing.
And I go, I don't get
Famous
paid
answer.
to teach nothing. So probe, ask questions. And they would laugh because they'd be like, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
you must
go,
get paid for something.
I'm very aware of my job and what I want to do. I do not, I don't teach nothing.
Yeah, that's the favorite question and the favorite answer, right? Or the biggest answer is, what did you do? Nothing. And
Nothing. And so I think we need to reframe those questions
yeah,
to
that
say,
that
instead
question's
of,
bad. That question's
yeah,
bad.
yeah, what did you do? It's a matter of, what did you like today? What went well today? What was fun today? Um, I love this one. I'm reading a book called Worthy, and I love this question where a dad would make his kids, they at the dinner table, they all had conversations, and the dad would ask, what did you fail at today?
Hmm.
And that became a badge of honor, because if you didn't fail, that means you didn't try. And I was
Oh,
like,
nice. Nice.
wow, can you imagine
That's awesome.
that at the dinner table, of that, wow, you failed a test? Cool. What are you going to do about that? How can we help
Nice.
you? Can you imagine what
That's the
would
thing,
change,
right?
Kohila?
Oh yeah, that's a tremendous that's flip, right? Because we always, and then the kids always think they have to tell us something good, right?
Right.
It's like in our society, we always only talk about good feelings. When it's bad feeling, it's kind of like you have to pull it out of people, and sometimes we never been taught how to share bad feelings. We are told to hide it or show it. Like, sometimes even me to this day, if somebody asks me, how are you? And even if I'm not feeling well, have you ever done this? You automatically say, great.
Great. I'm good, thanks.
But I'm sick. I'm literally sick. But I mean, sometimes I go to the doctor and he might say, how are you feeling? I'm like, great. No, sorry, not great. I have sickness. That's why I'm here.
That's why I'm here.
So so that's just like in us, right? We have to show this, put a
Yeah.
show that I'm okay. And when somebody asks, how are you, we automatically say, oh, we're not, I'm learning, I'm teaching myself to say, when you're not okay, Just say you're not okay, or I didn't get a good sleep, I'm not feeling well today. It's okay to say those things, right? So this is really good. So that really get the conversation going, because now you can talk about the things that you even failed.
And it's like, wow, can you imagine encouraging your kids to fail? That it is okay to fail. It is okay to fall down skiing. It is okay to not win a race. It is okay to do bad on a test. What can we do to support you?
Yeah, and a lot of the, the negative feelings like overwhelm and fear, they're all good feelings too, because
Mhm.
they actually mean you're doing something you've never done before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's changing that perception of fear and changing our perception of failure.
Yeah,
And that's something that I think in our society, that's, can you imagine if we change just that?
yeah. In our group, right, in our community, I always say, right, if you're overwhelmed, that's very beautiful, that's great,
Mhm,
that's amazing. That means you're
mhm.
passing through your fear zone, getting into that growth zone. So keep it up, keep going. Love the overwhelm, right? Love it, love it. So
Love it because yes.
if we can change it like that, see how even overwhelm, as I started saying that to myself, overwhelm doesn't feel that heavy anymore. It's a lighter feeling, like happiness, because only our body, like you're a science teacher, doesn't our body only feels the way we tell it to feel? Like it's almost in our hand to tell it to feel it's overwhelming.
And
Or
so much of that we learned growing up. It was a way to protect ourselves. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed. Ah, don't do that. Back away. Hot stove.
Mhm, mhm.
Being overwhelmed is like that. But if we can learn to look at when I'm overwhelmed now, I go, oh, gee, Molly, what's going on? Why am I feeling this way? Oh, well, what can I do? Oh, I need to break this thing down into chunks. I need to break it down into steps.
Mhm.
And then you're not overwhelmed anymore. But we're not, so many of us don't know those techniques, right? We haven't learned those techniques. It's more been overwhelmed, run away and hide.
And then our kids learn from us, right? We are the models for them,
Absolutely.
models for them.
Yes.
So you
I
have
know.
three
I think
kids?
one
Do
of
you
the
have three
biggest
kids?
gifts I gave my daughter was, and my son, but my daughter is like, she comes sometimes in college, she struggled a little bit. And she goes, God, I think I got a C or a D on my chemistry test. Cool.
Hmm?
Awesome. You did it.
Yes.
And she'd be like,
What?
okay. And she
She,
actually now loves chemistry. It's like her favorite subject.
wow.
But it was giving that permission to go, well, what are you going to do? What do you need to do?
Yep.
What do
Yep.
And she's like, oh, okay. So there's no, well, you're an idiot. You're a failure. You
You
just
didn't
didn't
study.
study hard enough.
No, yeah, that's the first thing a lot of them come in. What were you doing the night before? If it was my dad, he'd be like, well, you never study. We know that you don't do any work, right?
Yeah.
You don't know
In
how
my
much work
family
I put
growing
in.
up, if I got a B, well, why didn't you get an A?
Hey, yes.
It's just like,
Then when I got A, my dad will look at the absence column and say, where were you those 3 days? And I'm like, no, 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 we're looking at the wrong column. We're gonna go to the A column. Move it slightly to the right. He he
it's crazy. We tend to do that nitpick thing of, well, why did you get this one wrong? And it's like, well, look at all the ones I got right.
Right, over there, this way.
Yes.
You're right.
One of the gals I'm coaching right now with in biology, this last test, she actually passed it. And I go, that's freaking awesome, because she hadn't passed a test before. And
Test.
I'm like, but she goes, but I didn't get, an A or B. And I'm like, but you
You
passed
pass.
this one. And she was like, oh, yeah, okay.
Because the celebration is set so high. But next time, she's gonna get the 80, and then next it's 90, because that's the little wins, right? Gives the bigger one. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so bad that we as society, we don't celebrate those little things, the little wins. The one that's most important win for her is that win. I know from my students too. Always the little one first gives them that confidence to go for the next big one.
I was listening to a YouTube clip the other day, and it was working on some tools with dyslexia and ADHD. And I love this because it talked about if your child doesn't get the clothes in the hamper, for example, we tend to go like, why can't you get your, clothes in the hamper? Can you celebrate that they got one
One.
cloth in the hamper? Did they make it closer to the hamper? Can you celebrate the fact that, wow, your clothes are now in a pile instead of scattered all over the room?
Mhm.
And I thought that was beautiful.
Yep.
Because if we can celebrate those small wins, then that child is going to feel valued. They're going to feel supported, and they're going to naturally want to do better out of love instead of fear.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So you're in Seattle, Washington. So your
Yes.
camps are still happening at your home there.
Yes. So I live in the east side of Seattle in a suburb called Sammamish. Took me a year to figure out how to spell that. It's like
It's like
spelling Mississippi.
I lived in a city called Mississauga. So it must
Oh,
Mississippi. It took a while to spell it out too.
yes.
But I just want to say that if any of you are listening, I will have it in the show note how to connect with Molly so that you can connect with, or if you're in the area, you can actually get your children to go to one of these camps, because I wish I was young, Molly, and I can come to your camp and I can just see the way you speak and you animate stuff, how you're going to animate your camp. Because in science, it's all about that teacher's animation and the love for that subject that brings you want to get in there and let me do that too. And I'm going to figure that out with her, right? So you got that energy. You're so blessed with that. So I love that. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a blessing. And I've just, so many stories of kids that have taken my camps and gone back to school. And it's like they get basically a year of science in my camp in 1 week that they would maybe get in
Yeah.
in elementary school.
Yeah.
And marine biology camp, well, that's not even taught. So
We
um,
need you to really spread this joy you have, and I want to speak to you on that, because a lot of students, a lot of kids, a lot of families are not really learning science anymore. Science is no longer the interest, but the whole world, even as you said, our body is science. What we eat is science. What we look at is science. Like everything is science. We got it, and it's so easy to teach reading, math, art, everything through science.
It is. And I'm going to give it an example of the science that we're teaching. And the hard part, Kohila, is it's not taught to relate to anything.
Yeah,
Okay. So
exactly.
for example, and this is one of my little soapboxes. For example, we all go through learning cell parts. And
Yep.
we all learn the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Everybody can say that. But I asked somebody the other day and I go, okay, you learned that. What does that mean? And they had no
No idea.
idea. And I said, so mitochondria literally supply the energy for your body.
Mm.
It's how, adenosine triphosphate, ATP, is
P.
produced. You need oxygen to run that cycle. So when you exercise, your heart rate goes up, your breathing rate goes up. Why does your breathing rate goes up? Well, you need more oxygen because you need more oxygen to run that cycle to produce the ATP. And they're
Mm.
like, oh,
That makes sense. And
that makes sense.
that's why after exercise we need a little bit more fuel, because we probably used up what we had in that process.
Correct. And then it's like, so why are we filling our bodies with junk food? Why would you put sugar in your gas tank,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
You need to fuel your body like you fuel your car. You need to put good oil. You need to have good tires. You need to have good gasoline. And
And we
then
have to
people look
teach
at
it.
me like, I had no idea. And it's like, that's
That's
the
it.
problem.
That's the problem. And same in math though, right? I'm a
Yes.
math coach. Math the same way. Like we teach 90-degree triangles, Pythagorean theorem all the time. But we never say, have you ever looked at this your walls, your ceiling? They're all cut in 90 degrees. And if it wasn't, nothing can be tall and standing straight. 90 degrees makes everything straight, right? No connection, right? And that's why kids ask me all the time, well, why am I learning this stuff? I don't even know when I'm going to use it. And then when I say these things like you say, and they're like, wow, yeah, I guess I should know that. Maybe I might have to put
Yes.
something next time in my lifetime. Maybe I might could have come into handy.
But I think that's honestly like one of the biggest problems we have in education is we're just throwing these facts with no meaning behind it.
I love how you're bringing that to science. It's beautiful.
You know, and so therefore there's no value, you know, and education, I call it now, it's McDonald's. It's like, you know, you go through the driveway, you get your hamburger, your French fries, and you're like, eh. And it's like there's no value.
Anything else you want to add, Molly?
Oh my
To
goodness.
parents?
I just encourage parents, it's like be present. Be present. The best present you can give is your presence. Ask questions. Make up silly conversations. I mean, obviously you've seen my husband and I are pretty silly. You know, I mean, when you saw that last one, it's like, oh, let's make aluminum foil hats, you know.
The latest trend, guys.
The latest
Watch
trend. It's like, it's that important to have fun, to explore, to be creative, to play.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't
you're
matter
never
age.
too old.
Never.
You know, I tell people now when I found the LSC coaching program, I tell people now, I found out what I want to be when I grow up. And not that I'm ever going to grow up in that sense, but I go, this is that next step. This is,
wraps it up. The bow tie on the top for everything.
Yes.
Yes.
This is the cherry. Yeah.
Yes. Amazing. Thank you. Be present and communicate. This is my message too. And it's so easy to do. It's so easy to do. Even though we may think it's the hardest thing to do, I'm promising to any of you who are listening, it is the easiest thing to do. All you have to do is say, I'm going to put this away for 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
That's it. I'm just going to be here with my child or family.
And ask a silly question. If you need help, you know, just go, what are silly questions I can ask my kids? I mean, you could ask them silly questions like, you know, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Yep.
You know, if you could, I mean, I have a questionnaire for my kids at camp to help them, you know, get into groups. And I go, would you like a ketchup dispensing belly button, or would you like to sweat mayonnaise? And they're like, whoa, you know?
You just made me laugh.
It gets them laughing and it gets them thinking. And they're like, I don't know, which would I rather have? And it's nonsense, right? But it creates laughter. It creates conversation.
Anything to have that conversation started, right? And that's probably hard nowadays too, because of how we disconnected we are. We might think it's a whole new skill set to teach people. So maybe that's another teaching point, I guess, or coaching.
I think it really is, because learning to ask questions. And so in my emails to parents, I actually give them questions. Go ask them, you know, what we did. Ask them about this. You know, why did you get this car today? What is it about friction that you learned about today? You know, oh, you know, you can practice friction at home. And, you know, give them ways to foster communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Molly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. And I'm honored. So thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Our purpose for this episode was to spark a reevaluation of the current education system. For more episodes offering practical and comprehensive strategies to enhance learning, please visit www.learningsuccessacademy.com. It is crucial to ensure that children have access to the holistic neurogrowth learning approach, enabling them to break free from the constraints of an outdated educational framework. This is your opportunity to gain insight and break away from a flawed system, setting your children on a path to lifelong success that truly nurtures their thirst for knowledge. That's all for now. We look forward to having you join us for the next episode.